Global Environmental Facility, GEF, Global Environmental Facility. Why it is in news, why we have to read this, and what is this GEF? In June 2018, India announced that India is going to increase grants to GEF $15 million to $15 million to cope up with environmental problems. In June 2018, there is a news in all newspapers that India is going to increase the funding to Global Environmental Facility, GEF, Global Environmental Facility, that is GEF, by $15 million to cope up new environmental problems, to handle the global environmental crisis. Okay. GEF was initiated after Rio Summit or Earth Summit in 1992. GEF was initiated after Rio Summit or Earth Summit in the year 1992. Okay. It is a major funding agency for environmental protection. It is a major funding agency. GEF does not just constitute governments, civil society organizations, NGOs, private partners, and lot many. GEF right now partners with almost 183 countries, along with international institutions, civil society organizations, and private sector. International institutions, civil society organizations, and private sector. Till now, it has given $17 billion fund as grants. $17 billion fund as grants, and it is also financing $88 billion in more than 4,000 projects in 170 countries. It has almost supported 4,000 projects in 170 countries. Now, GEF finances for what? GEF finances for various important environmental conventions. First convention, CBD, Convention on Biological Diversity. CBD. See, CBD is called Convention on Biological Diversity. I am repeatedly using about Rio Summit, or also called as Earth Summit, also called as United Nations Conference on, also called as United Nations Convention on Climate, UNCED, United Nations Convention on Environment and Development. I am regularly using the word Rio Summit or Earth Summit or UN Convention on Environment and Development. All these three are one and the same. Rio Summit or Earth Summit or UN Convention on Environment and Development. All these things are one and same. In this summit, there were three important things that were made at the end of the summit. One is CBD, Convention on Biodiversity, was made open for signatures. One is CBD. Second is UN Convention to combat desertification. Second is UN Convention to combat desertification. The third is UNFCCC. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Okay. So, under this CBD and other things, somebody has to support for money. GEF will support for funding. GEF is a major fund provider. GEF, Global Environmental Facility. So, Global Environmental Facility funds, number 1, Convention on Biodiversity. Number 2, UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Number 3, UN Convention to combat desertification. These three conventions are signed along with Earth Summit. Okay. Third is UN Convention to Combat Desertification. Fourth, Stockholm Convention on POPs, as I have explained. Stockholm Convention on POPs, persistent organic pollutants. Fifth, Minamata Convention on Mercury. So there are 5 conventions which were directly funded by GEF. Convention on Biodiversity, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, Stockholm Convention on POPs, persistent organic pollutants, and Minamata Convention on Mercury. They were directly funded by GEF. Along with these things, GEF also funds projects relating to protection of biodiversity, climate change, protection of biodiversity, climate change, international waters, ozone protection, land reclaiming from land degradation, sustainable forest management, sustainable cities, food security, etc. GEF Secretariat is in Washington DC. GEF Secretariat is in Washington DC. CITES, CITES, Convention on International Trade. CITES, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Fauna means animals and birds, flora means flowers. CITES full form, Convention on International Trade on Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Okay. As on 2016, the data is available as on 2016, 182 countries plus European Union. 182 countries are there in CITES agreement plus European Union. The objective is that international trade of wild flora and fauna does not threaten or endanger their survival. That means, when you are conducting international trade of wild animals or plants or trees, it should not threaten their existence, it should not threaten their survival itself. What unike prashnardhakam avagudadu. It should not threaten. The trade of species in wild flora and fauna should not threaten their survival. This is the objective of CITES. Actually, the CITES was made under IUCN. Basically, IUCN is the mother of CITES. What is IUCN? International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. In the year 1953, under IUCN, the CITES agreement was made. The CITES convention was drafted as a result of resolution adopted in 1953. As a result of resolution adopted in 1953 in the meeting of IUCN. In the meeting of IUCN, a resolution was adopted for protecting wild flora and fauna in the international trade. There can be a trade, but the trade should not question their existence or survival. So, for that reason CITES was made. India is a party to the CITES. India is a member of CITES. And remember, CITES is a legally binding agreement. Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species, Flora and Fauna is a legally binding thing. It's legally binding, remember. CITES is legally binding. Roughly 5,000 species of animals. 5,000 species of animals and 29,000 species of plants. 5,000 species of animals and 29,000 species of plants are protected by the CITES against over exploitation through international trade. 5,000 species of animals, 29,000 species of plants are protected by over exploitation through international trade. So, CITES is a very important agreement. CITES is a very important agreement, CITES, Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna. Read that. Called Bonn Convention, BONN, called Bonn Convention. It's a convention on migratory species of wild animals. Bonn Convention, Convention on migratory species of wild animals. Migratory species of wild animals. Migratory species of wild animals. See, recently 2 years back, India has signed an MOU about birds of prey. Those birds which depend on other birds like vultures, raptors, they are called raptors, RAPTORS. So, this birds of prey MOU is in accordance with Convention on Migratory Species. This is Bonn, BONN, Bonn Convention on Migratory Species. India have signed in March 2016 Raptor Convention, Raptor MOU. It's not a convention, MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Raptor Convention, Raptor MOU, sorry. A MOU on conservation of birds of prey in Africa and Eurasia. Conservation of birds of prey in Africa and Eurasia. India is the 56th country to sign MOU. India is the 56th country to sign MOU. This MOU comes under Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species. This MOU comes under Convention on Conservation of Migratory Species. So, India have signed this. So, what comes under birds of prey? Vultures, falcons. Vultures, you know vultures? Vultures are very important. Even they eat human dead bodies. For example, Parsis. Parsis will not burn or bury their dead bodies. There were rings of silence, towers of silence. They leave the dead body there and come back. Vultures will eat. So, save vultures, particularly for the sake of Parsis. The last rites of Parsis are dependent on vultures. So, the dead bodies should be food for vultures. So, Parsis give a lot of funding for the conservation of vultures. Do you know this? So, vultures, falcons, eagles, EAGLS, eagles, owls, 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 hawks, 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 kites, KITS, kites, harriers, HARRIERS. So, vultures, falcons, hawks, harriers, owls, eagles, kites, KITS, all comes under birds of prey. Okay, India signed a Raptor MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. This is. So, this is based on Bonn Convention. Bonn Convention is based on Convention on Migratory Species, Conservation of Migratory Species. So, I think I have completed all the important environmental conventions. Will you forget?